Nettles may approach the podium here so you can provide your comments. Please make sure your comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Okay. Yes, my name is Pansy Nettles, and I'm from Brevard Resident Association. I am the president. I'm talking about our doors. I was here about 5 years ago, and they sent some people to do the work, but it wasn't substantial. Our doors are not locking. And I called, I've been speaking for forever about getting these doors correctly to be locked. I put in tickets. They do not close the issue for me, because you can go up one stairway. All they have to do is reach up top and pull the door open. This the management about 3 or 4 times, and this is not safe for my residents. So I think something should be done. Someone should come out and check these doors, because we have about 8 doors that are broken, maybe more. And that is it, what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes our public comments portion, and we may proceed with the regular calendar. I'd like to start with a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting held on September 27th.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We proceed to the chair's report.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. I saw one of our staff in the back, so we'll make sure that can happen. Thank you for your comments. I want to jump right into our agenda this morning. As an update, we are fast approaching the 5th year anniversary of Hurricane Sandy. And for this country and for many places around the world, right, thinking about disaster recovery is front of mind. We are, one of the things I often say is, recovery takes a long time, and thoughtful, smart redevelopment after a storm has been really the thrust of the recovery program here at the Housing Authority. So we had, as you know, there were 33 developments that were affected by the storm. And after a fair amount of work and negotiation with 3 levels of government and multiple city agencies, we are now in permanent construction at 22, actually. Right, Deborah? 22 of the 33 developments. So actual construction, which everything from bringing systems up from the basements to up above ground, putting systems on the roof. Several of our developments will have backup generating power, which is a first for us here at NYCHA, as well as other resiliency measures. And in addition to this, there have been over 600 residents that have been put to work through our Sandy recovery program. So this is something that obviously in the 5th year anniversary, there will be a lot of, I would imagine, media interest, but it's something that we will continue to report to you on in terms of status and updates. It's something that obviously you consider when looking at the various contracts that come before you. So the other note that I will just say, and I was sharing this with some of you earlier, I've taken the sort of unofficial role of being the, sort of consoler in chief to other public housing authorities that have been hit by hurricanes Maria. I should not start listing them because I'm not going to remember them, but namely our colleagues in Puerto Rico, where our emergency service director is on a special assignment with the governor there, working. I don't know if I think he's back in another week or so, working directly on recovery efforts there. We also have been in regular communication with our colleagues in Texas as well as Florida, and are working the GM with other PHAs, are working to really do some pretty good advocacy around making sure that all of the rules that housing authorities are oftentimes freed from after a disaster of this kind are also applicable to our colleagues in Puerto Rico. So more to come on that, but we've learned some 5 years. We want to make sure we can share that with our colleagues that are now facing the long road to recovery. Just so changing gears a bit, as you know, a big part of NextGen NYCHA has been modernizing the way we do our work, and the way and one important component of that has been communicating to our staff. We now, I think this number is going to hopefully increase after this meeting, but almost 4,000 of our frontline staff will now be equipped with handhelds, which allows them to open and close work tickets, allows residents to sign off completed work, allows for a greater level of accountability, and really is helping us align and streamline our work processes. So, it's a big step forward for us. There's a lot more to do, a lot more work to do, but it's been more handheld. What has flowed from that are also new protocols to how we do the work as well, with some good results. I was pleased to stand with members of the mayor's office and others, our colleagues from CUNY, to launch solar at NYCHA. This is something that has long been discussed as something that housing authorities, in particular NYCHA, has the capacity to do. So we launched announced that solar power, as evidenced by those solar panels, will be installed at 14 developments. And this will go on to provide another source of clean, low-cost energy to NYCHA residents, but also to New Yorkers, as a sort of a really important foothold into this emerging market. And I think it's something that there are only more lessons for us to learn as this important work gets underway. And to your left, my right, is a young man there who is a graduate of the Green City Force, who many of you have heard of, which is the youth program that serves as really our green ambassadors. And he now actually does this kind of work as his career. And it's just another example of why that program is so meaningful for so many young people at NYCHA.
You should have enough roofs.
Sorry?
We certainly have enough roofs.
We absolutely have enough roofs. 2,600 buildings and counting. So as part of our rebuild work, we continue to push forward in our NextGen Neighborhoods program. We announced that engagement would begin at Cooper Park, which is in the Bushwick area of Brooklyn. Engagement starting like what we have now done in 3 other sites, which is with the resident leadership, starting with lobby meetings, knocking on doors, making sure that as many residents understand why, and then how, and then engaging them in the what. Process is underway and will continue throughout the rest of 2017. An important, I think, sort of historical milestone for us is we celebrated the 80th anniversary of Harlem River Houses, which, for those history buffs in the room, was actually the federal government's segregated response to the demand at the time of the African American community to build public housing in New York City. And it actually was designed by the first African American architect at Columbia University. It's a really spectacular development, and recently has undergone through federal dollars a pretty significant rehabilitation. So we both brought back, and I don't think timers. We brought back some of the older residents. I think the oldest was 97, one of the original residents who, and this is also where we will open the first new New York City Public Library in 25 years. We will open up a new branch there at Harlem River. It now has a 500 square foot library, which sees almost 35,000 visits a year. So it's kind of amazing in that little space, and it will soon be a 4,200 square foot library in a new space also at Harlem River. So an important moment to pause and acknowledge.
Where is this located?
It's in Harlem. It's on 151st and 151st to like 154th, and it's on both sides of the street. Lots of interesting work happening with our colleagues at the Fund for Public Housing. One which is just continuing to mine and spark innovation here at NYCHA, but also in the broader industry. We announced our tech pilot winners, as well as the launching of our Ideas Marketplace, which is really a resident-driven platform to essentially crowdsource ideas that are driven by residents, both with being led by Rasmia Kamani Fry and others, but again, just a really great place for innovative new ways to approach some of the challenges that residents are facing, and ways in which to engage new industries in those solutions. Big news: NYCHA Journal went online. As you know, this is has been our primary way of communicating to residents. At one point, I think we had a larger circulation than the New York Times, but we have really worked to streamline this and bring it into the 21st century, putting it online. It is both in English and Spanish, and so please join the conversation and download it for your reading pleasure. We also last week capped Customer Service Week, which is a national customer service celebration. We really use it to both celebrate customers, both internally and externally. We announced the change makers. These are NYCHA staff who go above and beyond their jobs, and this will be a new feature of our employee recognition efforts to acknowledge staff up and down the organization, not just in sort of celebrating them and their work, but also trying to provide real training opportunities. So to my right, your left, is PASDA, something that our VP of Strategic Initiatives introduced to the executive team, which is basically how to run good meetings. And believe it or not, we spend a lot of time in meetings. So how to make those meetings more effective and more efficient, and really sharing that knowledge that the executive that has used and always needs reminders of with the rest of the organization. And
just that statement. I want to thank you and the GM and the team that's working on this new partnership for the seniors and the social services. It was something that's been one of my pet peeves for a while, and I'm kind of glad to see that you guys are moving along with that we're actually thinking about them. And those programs, there was one that I know started, I know that recently you went to Upaka, if I'm not mistaken. And so this move is something terrific. Many of them have called to say thank you.
That's wonderful. I think you're talking specifically about us placing social workers at the sites, as well as partnering with best-in-class social service providers who are actually doing the service provision, and NYCHA staff being that bridge. So thank you for that, because you've been a good push. So more to come.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Right.
Great. Thank you, GM.
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
I'd like to share with you the GM's report. Will focus on the key performance indicators, talk a little about some next generation NYCHA operational updates, and a report on heating season. We'll look at work orders, vacancies, and customer satisfaction. On the open work orders, as the end of September, there were 144,470 open work orders. It's higher than the previous month, 144,381. that there's becoming a steady state. If you look at over the last few months here, we're now looking at a steady state of work orders that are coming in and those work orders that are being. The uptick was due particularly in terms of exterminations. They were up by almost 600 work orders during the month of September. Review. In the past 12 months, we've created over 2.8 million work orders. For the month of September, we created 212 work orders and closed 200 work orders. Compared to 2016, where we created 216,000 work orders and closed 199,000 work orders. We continue to create more work orders and do more work orders. So I think that's back to what the chair was talking about, their NYCHA tools that we have in place now, that we're actually doing more work to create what is now basically looking at more like a steady state. Emergency work orders. 2016, we were at 9.3 hours to respond. 2017, we were at 9.2 hours to respond. It's tracking similar to what performance was a year ago. Make a note though, as you look at our projections, we're moving into heating season, so I think there should be an expectation of an uptick on our time to respond to emergency working work orders to respond to. Maintenance work orders in days. In 2016, we respond to a simple work order. These are simple repairs. In 2017, we were at 4.0 days to respond to a simple work order. Skilled trades. Skilled trades measures our performance in addressing more complex repairs such as carpentry, painting, and plastering. The service level in September was 74.7 days. We're slightly lower than the previous month, 74.9 days. We're looking at continuing to look at. In 2016, our performance was at 70.2 days to respond to these complex repairs. In 2017, it was 75 days to respond. We're continuing to look at development-based skilled trades and working out the logistics of that. We feel that if our skilled trades don't have to travel from site to site, they have the ability to do more work. We have these different tools now to tracking performance, specifically wrench time. We know when someone's on board and what they're doing, what they're assigned to. And we have we're in the midst of really revolutionary review and improvements on our procurement system, getting the materials that our skilled trades need so that they can do the work in time and not travel from Home Depot to Lowe's, whoever, to get the stuff. They can actually have a just-in-time type of availability of the materials we're getting.
Question on the ability to track, like bench time, as you call it. How is that going to be a useful? How can that be used to manage the workers better? I mean, are there any incentives or?
I think that I give a lot of credit to our IT department and to Bob Morris, particularly the Hawthorne effect. When you shed a light on something, performance somehow miraculously improves. Mm-hmm. We have our version of a comp stat where we have a statistical analysis of the work that we do. Mm-hmm. And we bring in property managers and most recently we brought in all the skilled trade supervisors and we showed them this tool. And it was suddenly there was like, oh, we can't get there because my dog ate my homework kind of stuff. But it was clearly we actually were able to identify who was doing what where. I think that message at the supervisor level translates down to the actual worker level. Mm-hmm. So I think in many ways we actually at a very macro level we're able to start to track overall performance, but on a very micro level we're able to let folks know that we're watching and we are concerned the kind of performance based on industry standards about the number of jobs you need to be doing per day, per week, per month, etc. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So again, back to skilled trades. In September 2017, we created 82,700 work orders. We closed 78,000 of them. Compared to a year ago where we created 77,000 and closed 71,000 work orders. A total of 129,500 skilled trade work orders were open at the end of September compared to 129,000. So again, this is now backing up some of the earlier statistics about work coming in and work going out. Sure.
So, in the scheme of things with the skilled trades, are they being placed strategically around the city? Or are we still sticking to you have one in one borough, one in another borough, and so on? So can you kind of,
Well, where we have enough skilled trades, for example, where we have enough painters, for example, we're able to have them where they're site-based. So they're taking their work and they're actually doing the work on site. However, where we have not a lot of like skilled specialist plumbers, for example, where we don't have the ability to have them regionally and in smaller geographic pockets than we did before. It isn't like we're having someone in the middle of Queens having to take care of something at the level. We're actually starting to do a better job of mapping what those needs are and having those more essentially required skill trades respond to it in a more geographic way. On apartment turnaround time, that's the time it takes from the time that the resident leaves to the time we can reoccupy it. We have a 30-day target. The year-to-date turnaround time for September was 55.1 days. And it's slightly higher than it was a year ago. We're now tracking year-to-date statistics around what was, we have 5,171 apartments were reoccupied year-to-date. Of that, 3,036 were done within 50 days. So we're now looking at 60% of our work is now being done closer to our goal. But again, when you add the apartments that take over 100 days, it jacks up the overall average to this 55-day period. So again, we're trying to get to a point where we're judging based on real-time performance and not measuring the outliers.
So if you had an apartment that took 100 days, that must involve some issues that are just not normal wear and tear, right? There's some other problem for 100 days to get it back online.
Yeah, and
I would think.
And we're now starting to look at dividing in buckets. So again, much like on rent, we've talked about trying to manage up to speed with what rent was versus past due. We're now looking at things like time in court or heavy vandalism or fire or things that are really outside of the norm.
Right.
And I hope to be sharing with the board a more nuanced report that shows what our real-time performance is based without those kind of outliers being added to it.
So it's just measured from the time the apartment is vacant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
when you say turnaround time to completion, when you say completion, you mean completion where the work is done, or do you mean completion that is put back on the rent roll?
Back on the rent roll.
Okay.
So again, that's a very good point. That now a marketing strategy is also tied to the construction strategy. So concurrent with the efforts we're doing on the break and fix, we have to have an equal focus on making sure we have residents that want to be in that unit, so that there's not a heavy rejection rate, and therefore having to add to the overall time of our response.
How is the work sorted? Are those that have more days prioritized in terms of when you're doing the work?
You know, I think it's
The
right now,
amount.
it's kind of all over the place right now.
Mhm.
It's really there isn't really a set system where we just recently had a discussion specifically on that, so we can clean up the backlog,
Yeah.
so we can actually have this real time data. But up heretofore, we've been doing it sort of as resources become available.
But I think one of the things that we have tried, particularly in our mixed finance portfolio, right, has been is to just really concentrate staff resources on other things and not on apartment turn, right? So, let them focus on the other parts of the maintenance and sort of break and fix issues, and figure out another way to staff the apartment turnover issues. That's a cost factor, obviously. So, but I look forward to seeing that more nuanced chart of the 538, which ones are higher, because I think that would give folks a sense of what percentage, of the vacant units are so heavily damaged that they take longer, or whatever, or we're in court with folks which can take upwards of a year on sort of basic things. So there's some issues there.
And just piggyback on that, and Chair, that would also look at altering our responses based on what the category is.
Right.
it would also be useful to see kind of like the quick turnarounds. What are the, the maximum and the minimum days? And if there's a cluster of apartments that are being, coming out rather quickly, then to see them also, like what both of them are coming out, rather very, very quickly, not at 50 days or the target, but way below.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. On customer satisfaction, in September, we made 3,086 calls, 2,829 responded to those calls, 2,298 said that they were satisfied with the work that was being performed. And that leads to the 81.2% of those who answered satisfactory in terms of our response. Some quick updates on some next generation NYCHA goals around our operations. We now have floor machines. These are machines that you see at airports, et cetera, hotels. These are now looking at ways in which we can provide more efficient cleaning services to our residents in our common spaces. We purchased 6 different types of machines. These are different types to depend on different. Some hallways are small, some elevators are big. There's ways that these machines do different things. So all janitorial staff will be trained on how to use these machines by the end of the year, and we're currently underway. These machines do things like replaces the traditional mop and bucket. It looks at machines for polishing, machines for stripping wax, machines for scrubbing, and machines that actually literally replace the old-fashioned deck brush, mop and bucket. So in terms of our next generation goals of modernizing and becoming a more efficient landlord, we're arming our staff with the same tools that are being used in downtown real estate management.
What about water vac?
We have those for sure. got a bunch of those.
Okay.
The old three we continue to use where we can't use machines. Obviously, we're not perfecting. We're trying to continue to use the tools that we currently have to be better at that. On the language access pilot, we launched this pilot on September 22nd. Property management staff will be connected to on-demand interpretation services by way of the language access language assistance hotline. System in English. Residents, the customer call center will interpret calls in Spanish when calls come in, and the language line, where a third-party vendor will be available for interpret the languages that the residents would need. This is now in a pilot format. We anticipate going live on a more full-blown basis at 9 groups and 9 sites. We anticipate going full live by the first quarter of next year. In terms of annual recertifications, all the NYCHA is now online with annual recertification tools. This will mean that our residents will be able to input their data. So one time, so every year they don't have to keep doing their birth certificates or their social security numbers, et cetera, just online. And so it'll be faster moving into the future. It also improves data on temporary housing needs. Year to date, we project that there's going to be almost $5 million of projected savings over 5 years with this tool. And amazingly, I think this is amazing, we're at 87% of eligible residents have completed their annual review based on this online this year. So we're almost at 90%. So this is one of those tools that we put out there. We had a lot of pushback early on, particularly with the seniors saying that they just didn't know how to deal with it, et cetera. It's quickly now becoming a tool that our residents are realizing is very valuable, and it's being adopted at a greater success rate than we even imagined.
Which means that most management offices are familiar with the process.
Absolutely. So we've also worked out a lot of the kinks in terms of our ability to go out and assist residents who have difficulty managing.
More than one person at each development?
Oh, no, well, it depends on what the development is and the time of day, et cetera. But,
okay.
But no, we actually started to have a simpler kind of walkthrough. It's a very intuitive machine anyway. Once you start pushing those buttons, it becomes pretty easy to to manage what the next questions would be. All right. So I want to clarify the procedures that NYCHA follows to ensure it meets or exceeds its obligations under the recent amended heating law. As shown on this slide, the amended heating law requires that heat be supplied during the day when the outside temperature is 55 degrees to maintain an inside temperature of 68 degrees. At night, regardless of the outside temperature, sufficient heat must be supplied to maintain an inside temperature of at least 62 degrees. NYCHA meets or exceeds these requirements by supplying heat fall below 60 degrees as needed to maintain the required temperatures. I'm reporting on what the law is this time around, as opposed to necessarily a NYCHA's procedure.
I have a question that pertains to the public comment we heard. So when you talk about work orders, often we're talking about what's going on in an apartment, but does it include things like a broken door or right? It does include the sort of more public spaces, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that there'll be fluctuations based on our FAS preparation, for example, where we'll create work orders for grounds or create work orders for playgrounds, etc. So the system can incorporate all the work that's needed.
Mm-hmm.
That way we're able to track the work.
Right.
But I think the other challenge that we are managing, and we've been able to replace a lot of these doors, which are either original to the buildings or are so old that our staff who do fix them today, and they're broken again, so folks don't come back, they're not back on site again until 8:30. So there's a real sort of capital need, one, to replace the doors, and that often is a big construction effort because you need to replace the entire frame. And as part of our, with cameras, with security sort of key fobs, these new doors we've worked to add them, but that's largely been at the discretion of city council dollars or major mod projects. So,
right.
So the unfortunate reality is we'll go back and we'll fix it. If it needs to be replaced and the development has the resources to do it, that will happen. But a large scale replacement of doors isn't funded.
Right.
That board completes the room.
Thank you.
Okay.
May proceed with the regular calendar.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Louis Ponce, the Senior Vice President of Operations for Support Services. I'll be presenting items 1 through 9. Items number 1 and 2 are very similar. We are requesting authorization to approve an increase for 2 requirement contracts: the survey, inspection, testing, repair, and alterations to fire alarm systems. These contracts are with American Security Operating Company, LLC. Contracts with an option to increase them for 1 year and 50%. These are for the fire alarm systems. They are monthly. We require monthly inspections and semi-annual tests on all of these alarms. This will cover any repairs or alterations that are needed. Item number 1 is for Bronx South. The amount requested to increase is $321,092.05. And item number 2 is for Queens, and the amount increase is $300,947.02. We have put in for replacement of these contracts. A bid should close on November 21. American Securities has completed a little over $11 million worth of this type of work for the authority over the last 5 years, satisfactorily.
She's so happy she's clapping.
Never had that.
No,
Okay.
no, it was fine.
Otherwise- Chair might get on the table.
Please
Sorry.
hold your applause to the end, please. Item,
Sorry, Mr. Ponce.
no
Go
problem.
ahead.
Item number 3 is a request for authorization to approve an increase to not to exceed amount of a requirement contract for tree pruning at our closed circuit television camera site, Manhattan. The contract is with Trees Are Us Incorporated, and a 50% increase is permitted under the terms of the original contract. Again, this is to prune or to cut back trees that affect limit the visibility of our CCTV cameras, or also if it affects the lighting, if it doesn't allow the lighting to be in those areas. This is in order to ensure the quality of video used to investigate crimes and vandalism at our properties.
a question about policy. So in both of these cases, the first three, it's about extending a contract. So is this the requirement contract? In the case where I assume we only do this if they're performing well. I mean, that if someone's not performing, that there would be an opportunity to perhaps rebid, or how do we handle that? How much of an assessment is there at these milestones where we extend their contract?
So there is a procedure and a contract resolution procedure. If the contract is not performing, we first give them a letter of direction, and then often typically with the letter of direction, we can get the contract to conform to his requirement. And then you're right. So we wouldn't request for the extension. We would bid another contract before we have that, before we put in for the new contract. So that's kind of the way it works.
But in these cases, the contractor is performing?
Yes. Yes. So Toys R Us, Trees R Us has completed approximately a little over $6 million worth of this services for the authority in the last 5 years. Item number 4 is authorization to approve an increase to not to exceed amount of requirement contract for a labor-only plumbing services. This is also this is with RJ Bruno Incorporated, and the 50% is permitted under the original requirement contract. The majority of this work is to complete heating repairs. So the heating repairs that are identified during our summer overhaul season are also our insurance company inspection of our boilers every year. They report back to the Department of Buildings. So we've been using this contract, the majority, to help us get those repairs done in a timely fashion. Also, this is for the Brooklyn Borough. So the Brooklyn Borough does use it also to do some of their repairs that need to be done. We're asking for an increase of $217,275,000. And RJ Bruno has completed about $1.4 million worth of plumbing services for the authority over the last 5 years. Okay. Item number 5 is a request to award a requirement contract for a 3-coat painting system for apartments. This contract is with Bloom Construction Incorporated. He was the 3rd lowest bidder. The first and the bidder were deemed non-responsive because they did not submit the required bid bonds. This is a 1-year contract with a 1-year renewal option. This contract is part of our effort to move away from oil-based paint. So this covers South Beach houses. South Beach also covers New Lane. It's the same management. This will cover both of those developments. So this is a 3-coat water-based. And going forward, we'll only apply water-based paint to this development. They followed up by 2. We've already begun this at Wyckoff in Brooklyn and at LaGuardia in Manhattan. This will help us also. The advantage of this is to use the water-based paint, which is what everyone else in New York City uses. There's also a requirement to the amount of gallons that we can store in our storerooms because of the flammability of oil-based paint. This will take that away. Also, it dries faster, so we should be able to complete the work quicker in the future. This contract is for almost $1.2 million. Bloom has completed approximately $4.8 million worth of work over the past 5 years. Their Section 2 plan is hiring 2 residents in the title of painter and 2 residents in the title of painter's apprentice to get this work done.
So this is part of Mission Makeover.
Yes.
So you buried the lead, which is residents get to choose their colors as well.
Absolutely. So the residents, as opposed to in the past where they get pretty much one choice for the whole apartment, we have almost like a color palette. I believe it's 5 colors that they can choose, and they can choose the different colors for their apartments. Also, the trim is a different color. So it's very, very happy with it.
And I'm sorry, this is just for a particular development, or this is for all developments?
This is just, we're rolling it out to development as we go along. So this is only for South Beach and New Lane.
We estimated that if we did every single NYCHA apartment, it was like $500 million. So we don't have that. So it's slowly being done. And we're trying to do it in places where we've done roof work and other things so that it's being reinforced and not going someplace where there are a lot of leaks.
Just to add another thing is we do the repairs before we put on the apartment. So if there's a leak in the wall, we won't paint that apartment. We'll work with the development or with my staff to make the repairs, make sure that the paint lasts for a good amount of time.
So I have to ask, what else is going on in Mission Makeover?
That's really the main thing. It's like
Okay.
is painting, you know, we've tried to do it in places where management, new machines for staff in order to do sort of floor work, some of the things that you talked about, so that it's not, you know, it's in your apartment, but also some of the common spaces, et cetera. So, but really it's been focused on this paint effort, which is huge.
Item number 6 is request for authorization to award a requirement contract for lead contaminated dust cleanup. The lowest responsive bidder was Alpha Environmental Services Incorporated. This is a 2-year contract with a 1-year renewal option. This contract is used to clean up after a lead risk assessment that we completed our developments. So the risk assessment is they take samples of the dust that's in the apartment. If they find if it comes back with over the regulatory limit for lead, this contractor will come in and do the cleaning. We'll go back and take more dust wipes to make sure that the apartment is free of lead dust. All lead activities are disclosed to the affected residents. The one issue with this contract is that it did come in pretty low. It came in at 20% less than our estimate. We brought in Alpha Environmental. We went through the bid document. There is no prevailing wage for cleaning services. He was able to provide the services at a low cost. We'd like to proceed with this contract rather than put it out for bid again. The contract is for almost $3 million. Alpha Environmental has previously done about $1.3 million worth of services, this type of services for the authority the past 5 years. And this Section 3 hiring plan calls for 1 resident in the title of lead cleaner. Item number 7 is request for authorization to approve an increase in the not to exceed amount of a requirement contract for lead-based paint inspection services. This contract is with ALC Group, LLC, and the 50% is permitted under the original contract terms. The contract uses a direct read instrument and paint chip analysis to investigate apartments and other areas to ascertain if lead-based paint exists. Typically, we use these as residents move out of the development, so we've characterized the paint that there might be lead-based paint. We will go in, we will test every component of that apartment and abate it and make that apartment lead-free for the next resident coming in. And of course, all the lead activities are disclosed to the affected residents. This increase is for $88,548. And ALC Group has completed about $150,000 worth of work in the past year with us in the authority. His request to award a requirement contract for window balance accessories and tools, window locks, latches, and handles. The vendor will be Barry. It's a 3-year requirement contract with no renewal options. This contract is for parts for housing staff to install on our windows to maintain them in good working order. The one thing with this contract, it is we received only 1 bid on this. 15 vendors picked up the solicitation. Procurement extended the bid date 28 days to see if more bidders would submit bids. We actually invited companies that provide this work. They've spoken to some of the bidders that did not bid. This contract had 73 separate line items. It's a class award, so the vendors have to submit bids for each and every line item. The reason they use this type of, it's relatively small items, and they're similar, so it's much easier to administer a contract for one contract for all of these items rather than multiple contracts. So it seems like many of the bidders who were unable to provide all of the items, so because of that, they did not submit bids. Barry Supply has completed about $572,000 worth of work providing materials in the past 5 years for the authority.
Mr. Ponce, what are window handles?
Yeah, so window handles, we do have, you asked that in the pre-meeting. The window handles are on some of the older hallway windows, where they're casement windows, and some of our basement windows. They're few and far between. Most of our windows are the double hung casement windows that you lift up and down. Yeah.
Or open.
Right. So those would be the casement windows, and on those there would be balance. There would be handles on those, but that's very minority. Very. small amount in the authority overall. Item number 9 is a request to reject all bids for a requirement contract for various carbon monoxide detectors and alarms. This request is due to the authority wanting to change the requirement. It was discovered that we did not specify what would be the base size of the alarm. So if we were to get an alarm with a smaller base size, there would be an area that was unpainted. We require a painter to go in and kind of touch it up. So we're changing the requirement contract to dictate the size of that footprint that it's going to take. So we do have the ability to get these alarms in the meantime until the new contract is awarded.
How do we ensure that the NYCHA, that our bid packages are correct initially? What sort of review goes on?
So procurement for materials only, procurement does it and gets it to operations or whoever is going to utilize it. For some reason, we didn't notice this until later on, until it was actually already bid. Yeah. We have to work in a better process to catch this up front, right? To avoid the extra expense of going through the bid process. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. I'm Bob Morano, NYCHA's Chief Information Officer. This item is requesting to amend an agreement with SHI International, who is a reseller of Interlock Mobile Informer. NYCHA uses Interlock Mobile Informer as its handheld software to interface with Maximo, our asset management system. Interlock Mobile Informer is a phone app that enables property managers, supervisors, maintenance workers, and the skilled trades to create, close, and sign work orders, perform inspections, and to record labor and materials used on work orders. Overall, it took a very manual, paper-driven process and automated it. This amendment is requesting 500 additional licenses that will bring our total user count of this product to 4,000. Therefore, we're requesting to enter into an amendment with SHI International for $247,292.
Good question. So this is just for the software, not for the actual hardware device, right?
Yes, it's just for the software. Yes.
And what's the there were 2 licenses. What's the difference between those?
One included another license for Maximo. We needed to true up our number count for the Maximo licenses that Mobile Interlock Informer talks to. So you have the handheld software, and then you have the software in Maximo itself. So we had to get licenses for both to equal the 4,000 number that we needed.
Okay. And we've already talked about this is working well, right?
Oh yeah. We're you can't. You have to measure what you want to manage, and this is really helping us measure that.
And then what about the devices? So do we already have the devices?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, they're rolled out. Yeah.
Right.
I have a question. So I know that in the past when repairs have been done in the apartment, I mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they would come in with a slip, and once the work was done, you would have the resident sign off on it.
Mhm.
How do we know that the work is actually being done in the apartment and the ticket is not just being closed on this app?
Of course, the great thing about technology, the resident can sign on the app itself. He gets a screen and he can sign on it, and also the worker has to sign also that the work was done.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
Good morning. My name is Adam Shugri from Finance. I'm here on behalf of Karen Caldwell, our CFO, who's out of the office today. I'll be presenting item 11 and 12. Item 11, a request authorization to ratify an amendment to increase the not to exceed amount by $642,000 for the Citibank agreement for the rent billing and remains processing of the rent payments. Citibank agreement with the authority had an initial 3-year term and 3 one-year renewal options, and they expired on July 17, 2017. The authority extended the provision of services for an additional 6 months through January 18, 2018. However, the not to exceed amount was not increased to cover the extension cost. The extension was necessary to ensure the monthly rent billing and collection activity while the authority is procuring a new agreement. The bank agreement for the monthly printing and mailing of the rent statement, and also the processing of rent payment mailed to the lockbox or paid through the online system or through the telephone. On May 9, 2017, NYCHA issued an RFP for these services, and the extension was necessary to develop, review, and scope the services, allow the selected vendor to scope the requirements, perform the necessary programming, complete the required setups, testing, and implementation.
Quick question. So what happens on January 18th, 2018? We then enter into a new contract with Citibank, or is this all just bid out?
Yeah, that would be item 12.
We are so organized. We're on it.
Another
Pending
question?
your review.
But I just have a question about timing. So, because the extension started in July, but we're approving it now. What was the reason for the delay?
Well, the request now is for the money to cover the cost for the 6 months. So the extension was already executed with Citibank. So we're here for the money to cover the cost for the additional 6 months.
In July. So why wasn't it
Brought to the board.
brought to the
Yeah.
board then?
We should have.
Oh, okay. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will take, we should have come, and so we will do better in the future.
So again, item 12 now is the request to authorize to enter into an agreement with Wells Fargo Bank for the monthly billing and remittance processing of rent payments and related services of the authority residential and commercial tenants. The authority issued an RFP on May 9, and NYCHA received responses. Evaluation committee, which was comprised of staff from various departments, determined that the Wells Fargo proposal was superior to the other proposal. The service that we provided by Wells Fargo under this agreement will include, but not limited to, the following services: produce and mail the monthly rent statements, which also include electronic rent bills, which is the e-bills, setting up and accepting rent payments online, setting up and accepting rent payment through the telephone system, processing payment received at the lockbox. Wells Fargo also would provide customer service to inquiries related to electronic payment options and the e-bills, setting up passwords, tenants that are locked out of the system. Also, Wells Fargo will receive the return statement by the United States Postal Services and provide us with reports in terms of the reason for the return of this mail. The agreement is for 5 years, which include 2 one-year renewal options. Also, the $9 million that we're requesting cover the initial contract period and the 2 renewal options. With board approval, this agreement will provide the authority with uninterrupted rent collection process, increasing efficiency and improving the option and services level provided to our residents.
I'm not sure I follow this. Does this include, say, online payments, or is this just mailing in a check to where you?
It will include online payment. Go to the website. Yes,
Mailing and physical check?
correct.
It's made seamless so that do they overlap in coverage?
Yes, so the contract, we're working with both Citibank and Wells Fargo to kind of have a seamless kind of transfer. So any payment that will be mailed or processed by Citibank during the conversion period, we'll end up getting it. So for residents, it will be seamless. So we'll be issuing the new statements with enough information on them, where residents will be paying their new rent with the new PO box. Anything else? Thank you.
Good morning. Deborah Goddard, EVP for Capital. So I'm going to start with item 13, which is the recommendation to award a contract for Sandy restoration at Coney Island. This covers Surfside Gardens, O'Dwyer Gardens, and Coney Islands. So the stat you just heard this morning is now up by 3 more sites in terms of comprehensive redevelopment. Recommending an award to J&N Construction Group Corporation in an amount of almost $25 million. The VNC is pending, so there's no final award until that is cleared. They are proposing 5 Section 3 hires. There are no questions then. Item 14 is the recommended award to P&K Contracting for a contract of slightly over $20 million for bulkhead masonry and roofing replacement at Mitchell Houses. This is funded by both federal and city funds. It's a minority-owned business. They've done 2 projects with us satisfactorily. Their VNC is pending as well, therefore no final award until that is cleared. They are proposing 7 Section 3 hires. Item number 15 is a change order relating to a delay claim for the boiler replacement at Lexington Houses. The contract is Stevens Technical Services. This change order is in a value of $515,000, negotiated down from double that request from the contractor. There certainly were delays here. This was awarded pre-Sandy, and then it was incorporated into our EPC. So the funds will be paid out of our EPC savings.
This is a settlement, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and what happens in the future? So it sounds like there were some problems with Stevens, and
No, I
is that
don't.
not accurate?
No, I don't
they
think
were
that's
just-
accurate.
okay.
It was awarded pre-Sandy, at absolutely a delay. And then we incorporated it, which made sense, into our EPC. That added more work. Some of the prior change orders were that more work. And so there was legitimately a delay claim. We did not agree with what they claimed. And so we
Okay, so that was the nature of it. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Is also a change order related to the boiler replacement at Hope Gardens with Stevens. This is in the amount of almost $100,000. Here, you saw me several months ago. We had the Department of Buildings come in, inspect. They asked us to move the flues. We did that. They came back in again. They asked for more work to be done. Different inspector. That work is done. This is closing out this project. Again, this was also incorporated into our EPC and will be paid for out of our EPC proceeds. And just to be clear, on these kinds of change orders, they've come all the way up to me and I've approved them. So, item number 17 is the recommended award to St. Nicholas Houses for roofing replacement at St. Nicholas Houses. We're recommending an award of a contract to Metropolitan Construction Corp. in the amount of almost $14 million. This is part of the Mayor's Roofing Initiative, his second tranche. Metropolitan is a minority-owned business, and their VNC has cleared. They are proposing 7 Section 3 hires. However, Metropolitan requested that their bid be released. The bid board rejected it. CPD concurs. Their first claim was they wanted to review the difference between their bid and the second lowest bidder, which of course would be no reason for releasing the bid. Then they came in with documentation, did not convince us. They were only 2.2% lower than our estimation, so we certainly believe that we're going to award the contract. If they refuse to go forward, we keep their bid bond, and this will go on to their Vendex history as being non-responsible. But we certainly don't want to set a precedent to walk away from this.
And what's a potential sort of delay factor there, right? If they were knowingly entering into an agreement where they may or may not want to do the work. So what does that mean in terms of?
I think we had one of these recently within the last 6 months. We would certainly have to make sure that we're getting full performance out of them, that there's manning it. This, as you know, is this is being monitored by a project executive with whom I have great confidence. So if they go forward, I am sure they will go forward. Well, if they don't, then they also risk a Vendex a poor Vendex scoring.
Do they think they bid too low?
That's what they said first, and then they came in with a statement that they had made a mistake in their bid. That paperwork didn't hold up to review. And as I said, they're only 2.21% lower than our estimate. So it was too low.
Maybe too low for them.
Right.
Perfect.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, 17 items were presented for board approval. Do I have a motion to approve the items? Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
I move that the members be authorized to meet in executive session today to discuss the civil investigative defense.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.